Our thanks to Sarah Murray from that conversation earlier tonight. Joining us now is Tennessee Republican Congressman Tim Burchett, who is part of a faction in his party which has been at odds with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy this week. Congressman, we'll get to the Grassley comments in a moment. I know you want to talk about that. But first, you were part of this group of these conservative hardliners who basically brought all floor action to a halt over the last week because of this deal that Kevin McCarthy cut with the White House on the nation's debt limit. What commitments did he make this week in exchange for ending that impasse?
Well, Speaker McCarthy did the right thing, ma'am. He got us all in a room, and something I'd suggested, and just to hear everybody out so that he knew what our thoughts were. We'd send emissaries in, he would send somebody over to see us, back and forth, and it's always something get lost in the translation. And I suggested to the Speaker that he get us all in the room. And really, I think he just committed to us that he would forge ahead with a fiscally conservative agenda, and he gave us his word that he would work with us and keep us in the loop. And I think that's the key thing, as he should with all different factions of the party. And it's a lot of moving parts, as you know.
So were those the only commitments that he made? Just that he'd make sure you're part of the conversation next time?
Yes, ma'am. I think basically it was more of that than it was anything physical. Of course, there's specifics. We're upset that the bill we're going to end up with additional $4 trillion in debt in less than 10 years. The largest portion of our budget will be interest on our loans. The largest portion. That's just shoveling money out into the air. And so I think we're moving ahead in more of a fiscally sound, and you saw what the chairman of the appropriations said this week about their agenda in the future as far as the appropriations and going through the budgetary process.
Yeah, those meetings aren't typically very fiery, but they were very fiery this week. And as you know, the fight for government funding is far from over. And what the spending demands are that we're seeing from the House, Republicans in the House, are not going to go over well, as you know, in the Democratic-controlled Senate. Do you think that
Sure.
there could be a government shutdown this fall?
Well, my friend Hakeem Jeffries, and he is my friend, he's the Democrat leader, and he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's representing the Democratic faction and frankly, the far left end of that party. It's always ironic to me that when the Republicans were in the minority and we were trying to get something on the agenda, we were called obstructionists, and now we're in the majority and we're trying to do the will of our constituents. Here we are back again being called obstructionists again because we won't yield to a very liberal Chuck Schumer, who honestly doesn't represent the 2nd Congressional District of Tennessee, and I dare say he represents the majority of this country in his thoughts and beliefs and his fiscal responsibility.
Well, he is the majority leader, and Republicans obviously do have control of the House. Separately, on another note, you said this week that you couldn't see yourself supporting President Trump if he gets convicted in the documents case. If he is convicted, do you think he should pull out of the Republican race?
I suspect his numbers will surge, ma'am, to be honest with you. As you probably have done your research, I'm I believe the only congressional member from Tennessee who has not endorsed the president. I'm just not a big believer in endorsements. I don't believe you pick up friends, just enemies, and I've never searched for endorsements nor given them freely myself. So, I really don't know what the end game will be. I know it's more clickbaits. It's more people on their cell phones getting more emails and raising more money. They attempted to censure Adam Schiff yesterday, and it failed. And I think he raised over $1 million overnight. So I told somebody that's all we did to Adam Schiff was just probably elect him to the U.S. Senate. But I suspect that's what will happen in this case, ma'am.
Yeah, well, the former president's already raised about $7 million. But when you read through that indictment and you see how he handled some of this nation's, most sensitive military secrets, do you think that's someone who is fit to be the Republican candidate for president of the United States?
Well, I've sat in a lot of those secure briefings, and I remembered my first one. I sat in, I leaned over to an old Democrat, and I said, let me get this straight. I said, when I walk out of here, I'll probably see all this secure information on CNN in about 30 minutes. And he said, Tim, it'll be about 15 minutes. So Washington's very porous, and I would dare say anything left in there is very secure. But you know, you're gonna, you know, and honestly, I mean, we can look at when Joe Biden was a senator and he had confidential stuff which he was not supposed to have in his own possession. And
but he returned those documents.
He has information.
He returned those documents once they realized they had them. Trump held on to his despite getting a subpoena, and they had to, the FBI showed up and then found those documents that were still at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, I can't speak for his reasoning on that, and I don't know about that, but I do know that Secret Service had secured Mar-a-Lago, regardless if he kept it in the bathroom or in an outhouse. They didn't even know these documents were there. They weren't in charge of. They weren't in charge of these documents themselves. But I can assure you, ma'am, if someone was in there taking stuff out or going in taking pictures, they would have known. I know the Secret Service, and they are a pretty fine-tuned group of folks, and they understand what's going on. So
actually,
anything within the perimeter of his...
If you read the indictment, it says that the storage room where they were kept was actually close to the pool at Mar-a-Lago, and there was a door in there that was often left open, and people could essentially come and go through that hallway. Does that sound secure to you?
Well, I can't speak to that. I don't. Well, is it the truth? Do I know it's the truth? I don't know. That's why we have a court of law, and you're not. You don't go to jail over indictments or accusations. You have a court of law, and that's what we're going to hear. And I'm sure you all will be covering it from end to end.
We will be covering it, of course. It's maybe the most important criminal trial. Do you believe that the charges, though, Trump kind of brought on himself, given he had these documents and refused to turn them over when the government so clearly wanted them back?
Why, sure, but he's Donald Trump. He's going to do what he wants to do, and that's his MO. And that's why people like him, because they're sick of Washington. They're sick of the same old stuff over and over and over again. And he's frankly is a breath of fresh air when it comes to that. When he says, "I want to drain the swamp," I mean, you know, it's not code. It's not something that somebody thought of in a think tank.
But how is that related to mishandling national security secrets?
Well, I don't know that he did, ma'am. That's why That's why we're obviously going to have a trial, and that's why he was indicted. But as you well know, you can indict as many lawyers have told me, you can indict a ham sandwich, but we'd still have a system of judge and jury in this country, and it won't be decided by the boardroom at CNN. It'll be decided in a court of law, and they've already started attacking the judge. They've already started attacking the judge that. Proven guilty, but you've already started attacking the judge. Prior to this, you attacked the judge because she's a Trump appointee. But if she'd have been a Biden appointee, you would have been okay with it. So, I mean, you obviously throwing doubt into the whole judicial system anyway.
I don't think.
Well,
I don't think
in your prior report, ma'am, you threw doubt upon her by saying she is a Trump appointee. Why would you say that unless you had doubt about her and you're creating the doubt in the mind of the public? Why didn't you just say?
I have no doubt about her, but what I noted is that she is a Trump appointee, and the reason that she has drawn scrutiny, with all due respect, Congressman, is because of her rulings from last fall. Rulings that I should note were overturned by an appeals court because they said she was simply wrong. She was giving preferential treatment to Trump because he's a former president and not treating him like he's any other person, like they would if it was you or me.
I can assure you, ma'am, if she was a Biden appointee and she was overturned by a higher court that was a Trump appointee, you all will be pointing that out as well. But she is a member of the judiciary, and the system is a system of checks and balances, and she has a right to judicate as she sees fit, and she obviously is going to do that, and that will of course draw your all's ire if they don't throw Trump in jail for 20 years, obviously. And you'll bring back the fact that she is a Trump appointee.
That's not fair. Just to report on simply what she has been doing, how she has ruled, looking at what trials she's overseen when she's about to oversee one of the biggest criminal trials in this country's history, is not attacking her. It's just simply looking at her record. It's not an attack. It's just reporting on.
Do you all make a note of was it an Obama appointee? Was it a Carter appointee? Was it a Bush appointee? Which Bush it was?
Absolutely. We talk about
no, you don't.
Who judges
you absolutely
were
do not,
all the time.
ma'am. You do not. Well, why don't you talk about her law school? Why don't you talk about her credentials? Or is it just the fact that she's a conservative female?
I've looked at her credentials.
Well, this is the first I've heard about that. from you all, then why don't y'all talk about things like that? Why don't you talk about she's a hardworking person, put herself through school? No, you immediately say she's a Trump appointee, and so you create doubt, ma'am. I mean, come on, you're CNN. We know that. It's just the game we all play.
That's an unfair attack. We're just noting simply her credentials, who appointed her. It is notable that she is a Trump appointee. Trump's own legal team in his orbit would say that. They're thrilled that she is going to be the judge overseeing this case. But we'll have to leave it there. Congressman Tim Burchett, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, ma'am. It's been a pleasure.